Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. This is the 2026 NBA playoff preview. Cody, we've made it. We've made it through the journey, and we are here, and there is so much to get to today. If you're listening to this, the play-in tournament may have already started. There's some interesting play-in tournament teams, but of course, we don't really focus too much on the play-in teams or the play-in tournament when we preview this playoffs, the tournament that comes in the second season. Our focus is who's going to win the championship. Who are the contenders? Who are the big teams to watch? What are the great series? What are the great matchups coming? Is there something in the first round that dictates something in the later rounds? So before I jump in with what I want to start with, is there anything that you would like to get off your chest that you would like to say before we determine definitively once and for all what's going to happen in the next 8 weeks that will not only determine, Cody, the end of the 2026 basketball season, but will set in stone some of the great legacies of basketball and sports history for the future generation to look back on? My friend, how you doing?
I think actually this is a time for a bunch of players to ruin their legacies right now, right? We got to forget the people for whom the legacies will be improved. It's everyone else that's choked or didn't live up to expectations or whatever other euphemism you might use for not winning the championship.
Are you suggesting that today everyone's feeling good about things and in 2 months 15 of the 16 teams will be total failures and losers, and then almost all the players will have all their weaknesses exposed on the internet?
Maybe I should actually ask you this, but I don't actually want to ask you this. But I'm looking at the bracket now and I'm like, I wonder which fan base would just spontaneously combust the hardest after losing in these playoffs. Like, which one feels like they have the most to lose going forth right now? And I have a couple in mind right now. I don't even think they're the favorites, but there's a couple sub-favorites that I think would really, self-immolate if they perhaps do not win a championship.
Ooh, wow. Fancy language to start. I would say, Cody, we talked about this a little bit in the last sort of power rankings concept we did about a month ago. And I realized after getting some distance from that, we actually talked about it at the very end of the show. What does it mean to be in the inner circle? Is there an outer circle? What does that mean? I would just say at this point in time, for clarity for me, this is one of these special seasons where I'm going into the tournament and I think there are 4 championship contenders. I see 4 teams that eat up almost all of the odds to win the NBA championship. I'm not talking about injuries and crazy, you got to leave a little room for that. There's a little room. There's like 0.5% for everybody else. But to me, there's 4 teams. One of those 4 teams will be hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy, brought to you by blah, 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 at the end of the season.
So let me ask you something. Is the 4th team that you're including, they're great, but
what do you mean the 4th team?
Is it because they're in the Eastern Conference? Is that why they've been elevated to inner circle status?
Are you asking me if I have one Eastern Conference team out of the 4 teams?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We have none of this planned. I have no idea what Ben has prepared for today, but I have a feeling that there's one Eastern Conference team, and I have a feeling I know which Eastern Conference team it is.
Do you want me to say that now?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
I think the 4 teams that will win the NBA championship are the Oklahoma City Thunder, the San Antonio Spurs, the Denver Nuggets, or from the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 teams I think eat up almost all of the title equity heading into this tournament.
Maybe this is putting the cart way before the horse, but we might as well just start there. Do you think that the Boston Celtics are on the same playing field, the same level as those 3 Western Conference teams? Or is it just that you pick them as the favorite, therefore they have the best chance in the East, and then they have a puncher's chance once they actually get into the finals, if they make it there?
You've put the cart before the horse. There's a lot to unpack here. I actually, you're being presumptuous. So I think what you're asking is if they were all in the same conference.
Yeah.
Would I stack it up that way?
Like, let's say that the playoffs was literally just a round-robin tournament of those 4 teams.
Yeah.
Right? And then you had to power rank them there.
Good. That's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you rank them there? Do you want to do that?
Yes, but also I think it's okay. Maybe I'm reading too much into this because we haven't talked about this at all. We just agreed we were going to show up and record in front of everyone. It sounds like you're saying you have the 3 or 2, I don't know, Western Conference teams as prohibitive favorites, and then you're acknowledging that an Eastern team will be in the finals. Is that how you're seeing this?
It is. I think if I do have to pick a favorite out of the East, which I obviously do, to me right now it is the Boston Celtics. They're my favorite in the clubhouse for the East, and I think they have a solid chance for competing for an NBA championship. But if I'm ranking my 4 inner circle teams, which guess what, Ben, it's the same 4 you just said, they are going to come in 4th for me. I think the 3 Western Conference teams I'm going to have a little bit higher in my standings.
Okay. I think we disagree then. We disagree.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm also, if you're watching at home on YouTube, I feel like Cody's camera is getting higher and higher over the months, and now we're just at your head. You're almost just a disembodied head at this point. Yes.
Should I bring it down a little bit?
I'm just wondering what happened to the arms, and
is that a little bit better?
I haven't seen the guns in a while. So, okay. Here's the thing that fascinates me about these playoffs, and there's more stuff we're going to get to as we go through this. But to me, this is a style makes the fight round robin type of competition. I think the betting markets have the Oklahoma City Thunder as a prohibitive favorite. I don't fully agree with that. Okay. I see different matchups having different kind of ramifications depending on who plays whom. So to your question about the Celtics, if I go through from the Celtics perspective, I think I would make the Celtics maybe the underdogs against the Nuggets. The Nuggets historically play the Celtics very well. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray play very well against the Celtics. And there's something maybe about that zone as well that the Nuggets like to run that could protect the defense relative to other strengths, relative to other teams, more in that matchup than maybe other matchups. I think if the Celtics were to play the Spurs, I kind of like the Celtics in that matchup. I think you're probably going to disagree with me because you might be in the back. You might actually have the Spurs as the favorite just based on me doing a little poker face reading of your body language right now. And then the Thunder against the Celtics, I'm not fully sure how I would handicap that as of today. This, of course, is a matchup that couldn't happen for at least 6+ weeks or whatever, but they play very competitively in the last 2 seasons. This is a different Celtics team than last year, right? So I'm not sure if I would make them a slight favorite or OKC a slight favorite, but look at what just happened. We just had the 3 teams that you asked me about in the West, and one I was like, yeah, I kind of like the Celtics. The other I was like, I kind of don't like the Celtics. And the third I was like, I'm not sure. Now we go to the West. Similar thing. The San Antonio Spurs, I would say the biggest weakness for the San Antonio Spurs, a lot of people want to say experience. I think there's some small tax to pay there, mostly because we don't know yet when the rubber meets the road, when the you-know-what hits the fan, which individual players are going to rise to the occasion. I think that's actually the biggest question with the experience. It's more like we don't know yet who you're going to go down in the foxhole with, what the rotation's going to look like when it gets really desperate, when you're like, I really only trust these 6 or 7 players. Is Julian Champagne's everything else going to keep him out there along with his great shooting this season? That kind of thing. And I think that's what we don't know about. But the thing I would penalize them, or the thing I would say is their biggest weakness, is some of the defensive attention to detail is not always there, and Victor Wembanyama covers it up. And what happens in plays when Victor Wembanyama covers it up? I'll give you a perfect example. The end of this classic regular season game against the Nuggets a few weeks ago. They went down to the wire, where Wemby has a game-winning isolation play to win the game at the end of regulation, misses on the baseline, they go into overtime, Denver wins the game in overtime. Cody, do you remember the play before that where the Nuggets tied the game? Do you remember what happened?
Let me think. If I remember correctly, I think there's an inbound play to Jokic on the strong side block. The sideline outbound goes to him. And I think Wemby goes over and he's defending him. I think Fox actually makes a poor decision. Does he double team Jokic, which leaves Aaron Gordon underneath the basket for the game time?
Very close. So the Nuggets run that pet play. It's all a bunch of misdirection to get Jokic that pet play where he gets that hawk cut. He gets a screen cutting across the face of the paint for the post touch. Julian Champagnie follows him. Victor Wembanyama follows him. So first, to me, I would think you want communication on whether that's a switch. And they both followed him. And then you're remembering Fox because Fox did not rotate under the basket from the weak side. He was just, I don't know what he was doing. He was just sitting there looking at the scoreboard. So during the regular season, when the Spurs offense has gotten much better in the last 3 months, the Spurs have had one of the best offenses in the league in the last 3 months. And Victor Wembanyama is on the court cleaning up defensively, and they have a plus 25 net rating when he plays. You don't notice these things, but when the game gets very close and you're playing the highest championship level competition with the execution to detail being of the utmost importance and value, that's where I'm like, okay, they're going to give a little back. Mm-hmm. But then you go look at a matchup. So against Denver, that might be an issue. Against their other Western Conference matchup against Oklahoma City, I think one of the reasons they've had so much success against Oklahoma City is you don't ask that many types of rotations or high-level executions against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You load up on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you funnel Wemby behind him, you keep him there as a spy, and then all those big guards can get into the ball, and all of a sudden this is a less cognitively demanding system to go against. So this is why I see sort of the style makes fights round robin of like, oh, in this matchup, your weakness might be bigger, but in this matchup, you can cover up your weakness. And now, as we saw in the regular season, the Spurs playing incredibly well against Oklahoma City. Now the Thunder and what they do so well, turning you over, getting into the ball handlers, is chipped away on the other side because Castle and Fox and Dylan Harper keep coming after you. So we're only 10 minutes in, Cody. We could talk about this for like 3 hours. I think this is going to be one of the coolest playoffs we've seen in at least a decade.
I want to get to the Spurs in a little bit because I have some takes to fire off there. But the Celtics, I want to stick with this for just a second because I feel like the thing about the Celtics and maybe what you're even getting at here in terms of how they might be able to match up well against the Spurs and but the Nuggets, it feels like the Celtics calling card is just that they are the execution kings, right? Like everyone that's going to go out there is going to A, play with motor, high energy, do their thing, but B, they're going to execute and they're going to execute well. And that happens. This has to do with our huge conversation we had about Coach of the Year and how well Joe Mazzulla has been doing, things like that. And that speaks to what he was able to do with the team to make sure that everyone's executing on the same page. It helps to have guys like Derek White, who, you know, I think in the Thinkies episode, we talked about him. I think someone in the comments referred to him as like a guard Draymond. So that's almost like having a defensive coach on the floor as well in that sort of way. So when you juxtapose that with the Spurs, who might win with brute force and who might win with just incredible high-end talent to just keep coming at you off the dribble, defensively, things like that, maybe they can find some more of those holes. But if you think that maybe they would be underdogs against the Nuggets, is there something about Denver that it's almost like it doesn't really matter if you execute, or like Jokic and the way that they're able to play together and the way that they have their system built over all these years, that there's just not as many holes for the Celtics to be able to get an execution advantage over them? Is that what you're getting at in that matchup?
Well, if you zoom out, in any playoff matchup, it's about both sides of the ball. How much of an advantage can you create relative to the average team with your defense against their offense, and then vice versa with your offense against their defense? So the Nuggets offense against most defenses, what did we say their offense was with Murray and Jokic on the court this year? 130 offensive rating? Is that right? Yeah. I didn't even know that was possible.
I texted this to you because in their last 10 games, the Denver Nuggets as a team in their last 10 games, their offensive rating is 128. Maybe you could throw it out and somebody could maybe dive into and be like, oh, they played this JV team 3 times or something like that. But over the course of the entire season, Jokic and Murray are plus 12 with a 130.6 offensive rating. That's 1,700 minutes, right? Insane, just insane, right? That last number, I feel like might be wrong, but it doesn't matter. Their offensive rating together is a 130.6.
No, wait, what number did you think was wrong?
I said 1,700 minutes.
Yeah, it's 1,700 minutes. They've played 1,700 minutes with a 131 offensive rating. That doesn't make sense, okay? Now, they're quote-unquote only plus 12. I mean, that's championship level, but we've seen bigger numbers before because the defense is still slightly below average. In that time, they shoot 41% from 3 as a team. I don't know in a playoff series if you can quote unquote rely on 41% shooting as a team, but obviously if you're able to make those shots and or generate clean looks like that in a playoff series and shoot 41% from 3 at volume, you're going to cook. You're going to have a really good chance to win the series. So that's against everyone else, those 1,700 minutes. Do the Celtics do anything? Do they have a counter that can make the way Jokic and Murray execute less efficient? And to me, the answer to that has always been not really. When I say always, I mean the last couple of years when they match up. And that's where if that matchup were to happen, I feel like I would kind of favor the Nuggets because then you flip to the other side of the ball. Okay, so Denver's defense isn't great, but is Boston's offense or the way Denver defends, is that going to be a big enough advantage for the Celtics efficiency-wise on that end to make up for that for Denver? To me, it wouldn't be. And that's kind of how I go about handicapping these series in my head when I say, okay, what does this matchup mean? And on each side of the ball, where can you find strengths and weaknesses relative to the sort of average team? Because we know against the average team, the quote-unquote average team, the Thunder wins 65 games and they're the best team in the league, basically. I mean, you can make an argument that the Spurs have become the best team in the league once they had Victor Wembanyama. They finished the season 28-2 with Victor Wembanyama. 28-2. And by the way, this was not a schedule thing, right? They weren't playing like the Jazz, tanking players every night. They just went through everyone for the last couple months of the season. Once I think their offense has improved, once they got a little more maturity under their belt. So, I mean, I think there are 8 kind of ish interesting teams in this tournament, but the 4 contenders, having more than just 2 or 3 contenders, having 4 full contenders in my book makes this a really, really, really fascinating tournament. I do want to get to other teams. I think the Detroit Pistons are really good and can win the East. But I feel like the Pistons against any of those teams, like the Pistons against the Spurs, is a nightmare matchup for the Pistons, the way they play. So there are other teams here that are really interesting, but just for once, we're going to put the lead first and focus on like the juicy of the championship contenders. And it's just so good. It's so fascinating to me.
We're starting with the big picture and then we can kind of trickle down from there. But let me ask, because I'm afraid that people might be like, hey, you two are talking Boston a little bit too much, but also like watch the season. Boston's really cool and fun to watch. And no one thought they'd be a championship contender at the beginning of the season. So let's have some joy here for a second. But I think a big part of what, especially now, can make Boston successful is with Jason Tatum coming back. He lets them be more flexible with the way they play bigs, right? Like he plays the forward position, but maybe he can slot in a couple lineups where he's playing the 5. He can, give them a bit more size when he is playing the 4. And I think defensively, he's shown some improvement throughout his coming back. So I feel pretty solid about that. But I do know that watching the offense, he can fall back into, let's say, Kobe ball a little bit. And I was wondering, after you've seen Tatum return for this little bit of time, has that changed your perception of Boston at all going into the playoffs?
Well, yeah, we've talked about this. I think tracking it since he came back, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, the Celtics themselves, since we're focusing on them to start, and by the way, they are one of the most fascinating teams along with like the 2014 beautiful game Spurs that we've had in the last 15 years in the NBA. They've been an incredible team, and the way they've done it is really fascinating. But that cuts both ways because the Celtics have been a team that has been one of these Eastern teams that wins what I call the possession battle, the possession game. They are getting more net shots than their opponent every game. And they're doing that by not turning the ball over and by offensive rebounding a lot, for example. There's different ways to do this. The Knicks do a great job getting more shots by scooping up all the defensive rebounds, and then they put Mitchell Robinson in there. Sometimes he's a cookie monster and he gobbles up the offensive rebounds. I don't know how these guys do it. The Pistons are the king. They were number 1 in the NBA this year in the possession game, and they do it with great defense, great rebounding. They turn you over. So we'll talk about this. But for the Celtics, in their matchups against the other top teams, they have not won the possession game because, sometimes you're playing Detroit, and Detroit's going to outbox you at your own boxing style, right? But also, this is what I'm saying, like against Denver, for instance, maybe against Oklahoma City, now Oklahoma City, Boston, since we're talking about possession game, Oklahoma City likes to turn you over a lot. Okay. They don't quite generate as many turnovers as last year, but they are one of the few teams that has recently won a championship by winning this possession game. And they won it strictly with the turnover side of things. So they force a ton of turnovers, and then SGA ball on offense is like the lowest turnover thing you could possibly imagine. Now the Celtics also don't want to turn the ball over. So that's where it's like fire and ice. Like the Celtics go into an OKC series and they're like, we're not going to turn the ball over. And OKC is like, well, we need to turn you over. And that's where I kind of think the Celtics might have something against the Thunder. To answer your question, the last time they played, I was fairly encouraged with the end of the OKC Boston game where they just said, you know what works better than messing around with Kobe ball or things like that? Tatum, you stand in the corner. We have our best athletic lineup out there personnel-wise. And Jaylen Brown, if you put a weak spot on the court like Isaiah Joe, we're just going to go after you every time with Jaylen Brown, who's a battering ram, put his head down. And by the way, the Celtics have gotten better in each quadrant of the season. So if you remember when they started the year, they had like, who's going to be the wing? Is it going to be Josh Minot? Is he going to play? Right? We've got Anthony Simons on the team. Is it going to be Jordan Walsh? Jordan Walsh had a moment there. And what we've come all the way around to full circle is like, is Baylor Shireman like a legit good playoff rotation player? Because he holds up on defense. He has way more punch on offense. He might be the best shooter of this group. We also added Jason Tatum back. I think Neemias Queta is one of the most improved players in the league from the beginning of this season. He's better at things than he was earlier in the year. Peyton Pritchard, I think, has gotten better within his role. So this is a team that's actually, I think you can make an argument overall, if they were all in the same bracket, is near the top of those four teams. They've improved and crested, I think, at the right time. And the big question is like, will that possession game stuff hold up? Will their style hold up? Will Joe Mazzulla calling so many plays hold up? What's going to happen? Is that a thing that just continues throughout the playoffs, or do teams see the Celtics sets enough that that kind of play calling becomes less effective, and you do have to resort to Tatum ball? And Tatum is not the player he was. He's been incredible with his comeback, but he's not a top 10 or top 20 player right now. So it cuts both ways. These are the questions, and I think if we went through all of the top contenders, you have these kind of two-way questions with each team like this. We did the Spurs a little bit. The Nuggets, the defense has been all over the place. Cam Johnson's been all over the place. And even with the Thunder, I mean, we've talked about Jalen Williams and not having him around. The half-court offense. Last year, the Thunder had like the second or third best half-court offense in the NBA. And this year is still good, but it's like eighth. And the other teams are talking about Denver, 1, Boston, 2, San Antonio, 3 or 4 or something in the last 3 months. So the stakes are very high for all of these teams. And I said a million things, but this is why this is such a crazy tournament.
Well, yeah, okay. The last thing I'll say about the Boston Celtics is I think the main question I have going in is Derek White and the shooting, because people talk about the shooting slump, and I think that's holding people back from voting him to be different All-NBA teams All-NBA, and things like that. Yeah.
Vote Derek White All-NBA. Is that
in his last... Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, listen, I don't have a ballot.
Who's not voting Derek White All-NBA? What's going on?
Well, first of all, I'm not, but that's mostly because I don't have a ballot, so I can't do that. I could pretend to. I could just like send it off, put it in a mailbox, and hope it ends up somewhere. But in his last 50 playoff games with the Boston Celtics, he has taken an 11.5 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, and he's shot 41% on those 3-point attempts. So he is having a down year by his own standards, but we have seen consistently that Derek White isn't just a good playoff 3-point shooter. He's a tremendous 3-point shooter in the playoffs. So I'm interested to see if somehow, like psychologically, is there like a shift after the regular season? Is this just going to be a year-long slump shooting wise? Is there something where he's dialing it up more? I think this is always the Drew Holiday theory, where he dials it up more in the playoffs, and I think that actually hurt some of his offensive shooting in a bunch of different locations. We'll see if that sort of thing happens with Derek White, because we know that his motor's been off the charts throughout this entire season. I think he was the winner of the motor thinkies this year, right? He was the winner of the perimeter helper, so he's very active defensively. Is he going to be able to keep that up and maybe turn around some of those numbers so he can be back near the top of the league in terms of volume and efficiency with his 3-point shooting? I think that's going to be the main thing I'm watching as the Celtics progress through the playoffs.
Yeah, the Celtics have been such a fascinating team. The Spurs have been such a fascinating team. When we look at these 4 top teams that I'm saying are the contenders, you've got these 2 real, like, what is going to happen with these teams? Because I think some people are concerned the Spurs, because they're inexperienced, could get bounced early. Somebody, quote unquote, solves Victor Wembanyama. The offense gets gunky. All of a sudden, the 3-point shots don't fall quite as easily in the playoffs when things get really ramped up and the intensity gets ramped up, and everybody knows your moves because they have a week right now to scout you, and then they just see you every day over and over and over again. And we've mentioned this before, but something that strikes me about how good NBA players are so good, sometimes you can't even wrap your brain around it. They will run a set, and most of the time, the second time a team sees the same set, they will just have an answer for it. So you get an after timeout play, they run the first set, they score, and the second time the defense is like, nah, we know how to solve that. The second time, occasionally they get you twice, and then the third time they stop you, and then the coaches are like, we can't go to that for a while because they know exactly how they want to defend it. That's how good these guys are. That's what a playoff series is. It's that dynamic, times 100, just over and over and over and over again. So with San Antonio, I don't know, Cody, do you think that Phoenix has played them really, really well? And we don't know if Phoenix will be their actual first round matchup as of recording this, but do you think there's something there where like a team like that can trip them up? Or do you think San Antonio in your head it's like Denver or the Thunder are the only teams that can take them out?
I think that's the interesting thing about the Spurs, like you just said. I think they have a lower floor than some of those other contenders you said because of what you said, because of the experience, because of the way that execution might happen and things like that. So if there was an upset of the Spurs, would I be shocked? I'd be very shocked. But I think they might have the highest being upset potential of those 4 inner circle teams. One thing I'm looking at, I think during the season, Stephon Castle, he maxed out at taking 8 3-point attempts in a single game. I think he did it a couple of times. So I'm interested to see. I think Al Horford is the famous example where it's like, hey, how many 3-point attempts are you comfortable taking in a single playoff game if we just let you go? Well, we know you can make the 3, Al Horford, but how many are you going to take and be comfortable? I don't even remember what season that was. I felt like it must have been like
2019, I think. The Bucks.
2019? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2019. Same thing. Is that going to happen with Castle? And if that does happen, is he going to fire away? Or is there going to be a way for him to just be like, well, I'm just going to drive headfirst into whatever defense you throw, or I'm going to have some kind of backup action to take you all on. So I think that's one thing I'm going to see. And I hate to just fall back on 3-point percentages, but I know that sort of scheme is going to happen against the San Antonio guards. So how are they going to counter it when that is presented to them?
But my counter to this is that teams have been doing this all year to Steph Castle, and he's just a batter. He's huge. I told you when I got to see the Spurs in person up close, the biggest thing that jumped out to me that was a non-Wemby thought was, oh my God, Steph Castle is huge. I think they list him at 6'7", 6'5.5" barefoot or something like that. You kind of lose that sense in your head of how big that is for a guard with his skills, his passing, because he plays this sort of like more traditional, I'm Jamal Murray or smaller. I got the ball handling. I got the passing. I get in the paint. I want to put the guard on my back. I want to get a little floater. I'm going to get to the basket. I mean, if you look at his rim pressure, his drives, he's in the 94th percentile in drives per 36 minutes. Now, his personal finishing isn't elite yet, but part of what he's doing is he's getting into the teeth of the defense and he's making you pick. Would you like to guard the greatest vertical lob threat ever who catches dunks when he's literally guarded? There are so many plays this year where there's someone who's like, I'm in perfect position, Wemby's behind me, and it's like, oh, but you're not 11 and a half feet tall, so we're just going to throw a lob. Or would you like to shrink the floor, collapse your defense, and Steph Castle's going to spray it to these shooters? That's the option that they present. But of course, I do think you're right in that this is yet another team that's so fascinating because the floor is a little lower. We don't exactly know how some of these things are going to play out. So we've got those two teams. Yeah,
I got to say something about the Spurs. I buried the lead.
Spurs thoughts.
Yeah, I've buried the lead on this one. I'll be honest. I'm going to be frank. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to get on the couch for a second. I'm actually nervous about saying this next thing because I know sometimes it seems like I can be a hot take artist. I'm trying to make this as least hot takeable as possible.
That's what you're known for on the internet and all the comments. Cody Hodek, the hot take machine. He just lets it fly irresponsibly. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. I'm trying to make this the most responsible take ever, but I need to get ahead of this because that's actually my number one question going into the playoffs, right? Victor Wembanyama, right now, you look at all the on-off data, it's unbelievable. All-time kind of stuff. When he's on the court with Harper, plus, what is it? A plus 26 net rating, plus 25, plus 26 in 560 minutes. It's incredible. Their last 30 games or whatever, unbelievable. We've never seen rim protection numbers like this before. We've never seen the combination of scoring and rim protection from something like this. Ben, I can't help but thinking that like 20 years from now, we could look back on this playoffs and be like, that was actually the first year of Wemby's GOAT run. And I'm dead serious about this. Like if Victor Wembanyama, and I believe that his highest level is to be the greatest basketball player that has ever played in the NBA. And if that is the case, at some point he's going to go on that run. So there's potential for him to have these kinds of playoffs. It's the same kind of thing where you have like Larry Bird calling Michael Jordan God and stuff like that, right? Where if you're going to climb the mountain, at some point you got to climb the mountain. And I keep wondering, I'm like, what if this is just it? What if the Spurs just rip through the playoffs? Maybe not even rip through the playoffs. Maybe it's competitive, but Wemby just doesn't lose a beat. and everything that he's doing is just as effective in the playoffs. And that's what I keep thinking. So that's my number one question is when we look back on these playoffs in 20 years, was this the beginning of the GOAT run for Victor Wembanyama?
You definitely bury the lead because I think with these 4 contenders we're talking about, there are some sort of, they call it the X factor, but that's not the right sort of concept that I'm getting at. There are some swing players. You know, we talked about the Celtics, Peyton Pritchard and his growth during the season. Can he continue cooking people the way he does? He's such an interesting driver and isolation scorer and big shot maker. You mentioned maybe Derek White's 3-point shooting. They're just some things that they are the difference between getting upset in 6 games and moving on in a big championship level round in 6 games. You asked me about Steph Castle, but it sounds like you're adding Victor Wembanyama himself as like the biggest swing skill because and man, you started the show with this tongue in cheek, but I hate it. I hate when new players get into the playoffs. They don't put up 34 points, 18 rebounds, and right, like their true shooting percentage goes down a couple percentage points in a 5-game series, and then everyone's like, "Well, that player fell apart and choked. We know he's no good in the postseason." If something like that happens, then of course the pitchforks will be out. But more importantly, it's unlikely the Spurs win. But you're cutting the other way and saying, like, what are the things that will make the Spurs win? It's not just the defensive presence. It's that you're probably going to need Wemby to make some threes or have some big scoring games or not see the offense get bogged down in situations where it really feels like they know how to defend him. The video we did for members, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball at the beginning of the year on how the Suns swarmed him with small players and that kind of threw him off balance. I think he's been stronger and better against those defenses, but more importantly, I just think the rest of the Spurs have been better. You know, Steph Castle, is he the big swing player for how teams defend San Antonio and how that offense works in the postseason? Or is it what I mentioned earlier, all the other players showing up and it's like, well, when your shot's not going well and you're just surrounded by these kinds of players, like Devin Vassell disappears and Julian Champagny disappears, all of a sudden that rotation and De'Aaron Fox can't shoot. Man, that rotation feels real thin where you're like, I trust Castle and Wemby and Harrison Barnes. Is that, you know, and then maybe there's more. I don't know.
And I think even if that's the case, like let's go back, let's turn back the clocks to 2009, right? And we had a couple of seasons of LeBron James, right? Starting his NBA career, getting into the playoffs. Of course, he makes the finals in 2007. Not a great run against the Spurs, gets swept, not great numbers, not a great team, overmatched, whatever else. 2008, still great playoffs. But when 2009 rolls around, those playoffs come, that's still being hailed. Like people on the internet are questioning. It's like, is 2009 LeBron the best LeBron? Of course, go back to our summer series. We have the 3 LeBron Bob problem that we talked about for an hour and a half, right? The 3 peaks of LeBron James. They lose in the conference finals. And yet that is still hailed as like, this was the coming of LeBron James. This was the arrival of like this GOAT candidate we're talking about. So even if this happens, even if everything falls apart around Wemby, the question can still be asked. It's like, what is the greatness that he's going to bring during these playoffs? So it doesn't necessarily mean that like, hey, if he doesn't win the championship, it's over. Like Jordan spent the 80s losing as well a few times, but I think by the end of the 80s, people are like, yeah, that dude's on another level right now. And I think that is up for grabs here. And for somebody that's historically minded and very interested about how the NBA is remembered and how different players match up with each other, to me, that's the most intriguing storyline. And yeah, if everything's clicking for the Spurs, I think that could mean that they're ahead of schedule and they win the championship this year.
How do you feel about the matchup with Denver in the second round if that comes to pass? Is there something there? I mean, Jokic, of course, in the meeting we had a couple weeks ago, did Jokic things. I thought Wemby defended him fine, but Jokic, I mean, in the fourth quarter, the dude made a Sombor shuffle from outer space. There's just literally no defense for that. He's absolutely incredible. And I think if you're going to get high-level performances from Cam Johnson and Christian Brown and Peyton Watson is back and healthy, we know how dangerous that team is. The core is a team with championship pedigree. Aaron Gordon has missed a ton of time this year. So is there something there, you know, not always having Jokic on Wemby, changing the matchup, the versatility of Aaron Gordon as a defender? Does that make you nervous for this potential ascension of what we might, because I see 86 Houston Rockets run. I see 1971 Milwaukee Bucks, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hitting the arc that you're talking about. I see those similarities, but also the way the bracket shaked out, you have to go through Denver probably just to get to OKC.
That's ultimately what happens. 91, Michael Jordan has to get through Magic Johnson, right? Like these sorts of matchups are the things that just happen, and they elevate you to a certain level. So I think, I don't want to make a prediction about if that were happening. I don't want to put the cart too far ahead of the horse, but I think that's a really tough matchup for the Spurs. And I think right up and down, I guess I said I wasn't going to make a prediction. Maybe I would. I think I might like the Nuggets roster a little bit more if they're all clicking, right? And I know Peyton Watson came back recently. He's getting integrated. So it's just been weird to have this team that's been decimated by injuries, and the defense kind of slipped, and Jokic, maybe it was a bit more of a negative defender than we saw, and maybe had some turnover issues, et cetera, et cetera. But then you see them elevate. And I made this point in an earlier episode here, but every time they get in the playoffs and they face off against a tough opponent, it's just 7 games. Like OKC, they go down to the wire, 7 games, right? Timberwolves, 7 games. I think Clippers, 7 games. Right?
Which Clippers?
Was it last year? Was it in the first round? The Nuggets and the Clippers?
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the 7 games in the bubble.
Which
was following 7 games against Utah in the bubble. So
that's just the thing that the Nuggets do, is they get a tough opponent, they execute well, they have Jokic, and they take it right down the wire. So I don't know. I think that would be amazing if we could get that in the second round and just see this early in the playoffs how much are these guys and these teams made of.
Well, it's pretty likely that I think we're going to get that. Now, someone in the audience is bringing up a point that I have heard as well, which is this idea that if you're a rim roamer, we saw it with Anthony Davis and the Los Angeles Lakers matchup against the Nuggets multiple times over the last few seasons, and Wemby has this as well. Jokic and the way the Nuggets are constructed might have the antidote to kind of how much rim pressure you can take away. Because, again, the way Jokic operates in the middle of the court, catching at the nail or on the side, backing his way down, being very methodical, asking, what are you going to do? And then making a decision, a little hook shot, a little flip. That doesn't seem to affect him as much as the traditional drive down the paint. I got to pick and roll. I'm going to get to my strong hand. I get in the paint. Oh my God, there's an alien who's 8 feet tall. I'm not shooting it. Here, you shoot it. No, you're not going to shoot it. Here, you shoot it. We're back outside. The Nuggets aren't constructed like that. And I do think that's potentially a matchup edge they would have there. I do kind of, for me, I don't know how you feel about this, Cody, look at the rest of the Denver roster, because the way they've been constructed in the past, to me, has been understated. The Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Michael Porter Jr., that cadre of shooters and experience and veterans and whatnot, even Bruce Brown of 2023, I think, is better than Bruce Brown of 2026 for both for Bruce as a player and for where the league is at that point in time and this point in time. So to me, it really comes down to, can the other Nuggets players execute? I'm not really worried about Jokic not executing, although it has felt like he's actually been closer to being human since coming back from injury, where at the beginning of the year, he just wasn't missing anything. So it's more about Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, guys like that for me with Denver in this matchup.
And I think Peyton Watson is a pretty big X factor going to the playoffs here, because this is the most developed and the best that he's been, being able to handle as much as he did offensively. So I'm interested to see if he can carry that development into the playoffs with as much efficacy as he's shown. Because again, he's also another flexible defensive player. And I think that's the calling card, is like, can you get as much flexible defense around Jokic with guys that can also knock down open shots and drive to the basket? Because was that the, that could have either been the Celtics or the Spurs game, which I think it was the Celtics, though, and they just left Christian Brown open in the corners, just like wide open every possession. He made like 5 out of 11 or something like that and made them pay. So if that sort of thing happens continuously throughout the playoffs, that just essentially, like we said, decided earlier with the 130 offensive rating number, it essentially makes the Nuggets impossible to defend.
I think what's interesting about this conversation takes us to one of my big questions that I had for you, which is the unknown factors of the postseason that we look at from like a stylistic perspective or a league trend perspective. A couple of years ago was, you need a big three and the stars are, it can't be one guy, you need multiple guys. And now we know depth has become a big thing, and the rotations of these teams, we've talked about it. It's almost less to me about Castle and Wemby, although of course they're a huge part of it. It's almost less about Murray and Jokic, although Murray is a mercurial player. He can go up and down, and when he's going, it's pretty incredible. And when he's not going, Denver feels a lot more vulnerable, especially because they don't have a lot of other ball handlers. Historically, we saw that last year where they got Aaron Gordon bringing the ball up, and 2 years ago where the Timberwolves are just hounding them in the backcourt, forcing turnovers, that swarming Minnesota team of a couple seasons ago defensively. So I look at where we are in time in 2026, and I say, is one of the big questions of the postseason going to be who's the team that can get the best minutes from their fifth, sixth, and seventh man? Who's the team that's going to get that, like, and this is where I kind of come back to the Celtics and go, like, I just feel like it's hard for me to see Baylor Shireman going 0 for 26 in a playoff series, right? That just doesn't they're one of the most mentally tough teams I've encountered in a long time. And these are the unknowns with the Spurs, but these are also the unknowns with the Nuggets peripheral players. And last year we saw Oklahoma City struggle with some of the outside shooting around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. In the finals, you mentioned it recently, it took Jalen Williams having an enormous 40-point game, having a bigger offensive exertion. So with OKC, if J-Dub's not going to be there to be able to provide that extra offensive punch, then what is it? Is it success by committee? Is it Isaiah Hartenstein ball when Shai goes to the bench for 10 minutes a game? Or is it Chet Holmgren picking up a bigger... to me, it's almost like it's got to be the entire supporting cast and how well they shoot, and how well these guys can play in their minutes, executing on the margins. Because I think when you get to these highest level matchups between these four teams, and I want to get to Detroit in a second, we need like 2 hours for this. There's just so much to cover. But the style of these games and the battle for rebounds, the battle for boxing out, the ability to not turn it over, the ability to communicate on defense and not make errors, right? Don't give up easy stuff. Don't have breakdowns. That's where the championship's going to be won or lost to me. And so how much of that comes down to, is Keldon Johnson really, really good in the playoffs versus did Keldon Johnson disappear in the playoffs? I
literally have a Keldon Johnson moment queued up here, because the way that Keldon Johnson plays basketball, he's a Pistons player, right? He's physical. Yeah. He drives in. You throw him on the Thunder, you throw him on the Pistons, he would fit right in. I think he's a perfect type of Pistons player. But it is built a lot on his physicality getting downhill. He's one of the great non-big offensive rebounders in the NBA. And so I wonder, I'm like, how effective could this be? And Ben, let me ask you, how effective do you feel like Keldon Johnson's been in the playoffs so far in his career?
He's never played in the playoffs, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right? Look at you. You're on top of your game today.
It was a trick question. He's been around. He's been around for a minute. Yeah.
He's been around. He's never played a playoff game. So we're not sure how well Keldon Johnson ball translates over. And I think for the energy that the Spurs had, he was extremely important in his sixth man minutes, right? So like you said, you bring up somebody like Baylor Shireman, you bring up some of those other guys that are coming off the bench for the Celtics. Maybe just right now, I'm kind of trusting what they would be able to do with their sixth, seventh, eighth men versus what somebody like San Antonio would be able to do. So yeah, you might be right. The playoffs might be won on the margins of those rosters as opposed to the big three. That, you're not rolling out LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and 40-year-old Mike Bibby and Joel Anthony at this point. Like, that's just not going to fly in these playoffs.
Right. So you have to assume Luke Cornett has relatively low minutes. So we're talking about Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, Julian Champagny, Devin Vassell, and Dylan Harper around Fox, Castle, and Wemby. For the Nuggets, you're talking about, as we mentioned, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Bruce Brown. A name we haven't mentioned that could be big because he has a lot of experience is Tim Hardaway Jr. As he's a veteran, so how well can he hold up with all the other schematic little things, special teams components, and make shots? I feel like we've talked about this before, that he's a streaky shooter, that there are times when you're watching Tim Hardaway Jr. and you're like, what is he, like 80% from three? And then there are other stretches where he doesn't make shots. And then, of course, Cam Johnson is probably the biggest one for the Nuggets. We'll see if Spencer Jones is involved in that rotation around Murray and Jokic and Aaron Gordon. I think you can punch it. Aaron Gordon's a championship type player. And then Oklahoma City, it feels like because of what we saw last year, there are fewer questions, but also Oklahoma City, there are things with the offense last year that got gunky in the postseason. They didn't win the title with very good offense.
No.
Right? So does that mean we're going to get better shooting from Lou Dort or Cason Wallace or Alex Caruso? I don't think so. What do you think?
Well, okay, so I think a big part of last year, too, we were looking at a lot of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's numbers during the regular season. It was off the charts, like the scoring, the creation, efficiency matched any guard in NBA history. But when we got to the playoffs, and I was going to try and pull it up quickly, but the stats seems a little behind today. It's not quite up to snuff right now. He dipped a little bit. I thought he was closer to a neutral efficiency scorer, which when you take that away from what Shai was able to do on a night-to-night basis, it took him away from being like one of the greatest guards ever to whatever like a tier or a half tier below that might be, right? And so it's interesting to see you bring up some of the other guys for the Thunder. Is Shai going to be able to keep up? Because he seems to have gone up another level this year, specifically with his playmaking abilities.
Yes.
So does he use that outlet valve and creating for his teammates to actually juice the offense a little bit more, even though, relatively speaking, their offense was better last year during the regular season?
Cody, this is yet another team where this is why I said we need like 2 hours for this show easily. The Thunder, in a sense, relative, like they're I think odds-on favorite to win. I think they're the biggest favorite, and of course they had the best regular season, and of course they're the defending champs, and of course they almost won 70 games last year, and of course they were on like a 70-game pace this year when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was healthy, and yet there's this element where we know the ceiling is great. All the new component, Jared McCain, if he gets minutes and he shoots the ball, and Jalen Williams from Arkansas, he's shooting the three better in his minutes, and Chet Holmgren's a year older, and you got AJ Mitchell. Oh my goodness, what's it going to be like watching AJ Mitchell? I actually think AJ Mitchell could be huge for them in big moments in the playoffs, and so that gives them this great ceiling. But then there's the question of the floor, and if we're going to see, I think we will. But if we see what you're talking about with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the way teams defended him, and that Denver series, and even in the first round, is having success mucking up his airspace and trying to take away his airspace and say, look, you got to throw it to Caruso 12 times a game. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's what you're going to do. You're going to have to throw it to Caruso 12 times a game and let him shoot or be the playmaker. We've seen so many things in the last 2 seasons where teams double team at half court, deny him the ball, and yet, Cody, he has shown to me that he might be up another level this year into the true all-time greats, into this situation where if we redid our top 25 peaks of the 21st century, he would slide up comfortably into that upper group that he was bumping up against, and he would be like, yeah, I think he might be better than peak Dwayne Wade, that kind of thing, right? He has the potential to do that because of this playmaking, and how much does that playmaking as an antidote help to the way teams defended him last year in the postseason? These 4 top teams to me are just let's just do it. Let's just roll out 30 games of these teams and see what happens. This is incredible.
But yeah, again, you're talking about the guys in the margins, but Spurs, you talk about Julian Champagnie, all of the guys in the Nuggets, blanking on half of the players' names already, Cam Johnson and whomever else. When you look at the guys that are going to be next to Shai, he gets loaded up on, he has to pass these guys. Alex Caruso shooting under 30% from 3 this season. Cason Wallace and Lou Dort right around 34, 35-ish%. And I know Wallace is pretty significantly under 3-point attempts per 75 on a league average basis, right? So even if his passing is great, I don't have the calculator in front of me, but I know that his numbers aren't necessarily somebody that juices his teammates' rim attempts, right? He juices his team's rim attempts just by nature of his ability to get to the basket and score those shots, but he's much more of a get into the paint and spray it out for shooters. But, and we've seen it last year in the playoffs, like Lou Dort is more than willing to just fire threes and fire threes and fire threes. And if that happens and it's not going in, like the Thunder all of a sudden offensively become very beatable, right? And I think even Chet's shooting ability, because he's a stretch big, right? But is he going to be comfortable taking all that many threes? And is he going to be comfortable attacking on a second side in a lot more actions where Shai is being loaded up on? J-Dub, how much is he going to be ready to rock and roll? And is he going to be able to drop another 40 piece? So I'm very high on the Thunder. And of course I have them in the inner circle, but I think that their offense out of these 4 contenders might have the most, what's the term? The gunkabilitiest, the most gunkable offense of them, where I could see it getting kind of grimy, But Shea, if he's just cooking and he elevates himself to top 10 of the 21st century status, maybe that ultimately doesn't matter. And then everyone else can just lock in defensively and it works that way. So I think those are some interesting questions. Like what's going to happen with the peripheral guys offensively for the Oklahoma City Thunder?
All right. My next big question is, will this possession game style hold up in the playoffs? Because I think there's this assumption that if you look at the Detroit Pistons, who took 4 more shots on average per game than their opponents, it's just such an awesome baked-in advantage. You don't have to be nearly as efficient. You just literally take 4 more shots than the other team because of rebounding and turnovers. And they did this consistently throughout the year. It's part of their style. They hit the glass. They force turnovers. And they have been a fantastic defensive team. They have been much closer to Oklahoma City defensively than Detroit is to everyone else defensively, non-Wemby minutes aside, or Wemby minutes aside. And so I think there's this assumption that, well, the Pistons don't have any shooters, and they don't have any big-time players outside of Cade Cunningham, and therefore they're not constructed to win in the postseason. And I'm kind of questioning that. That's like a legitimate question for me, because watching the tape of how these top teams play, they held their own pretty well in all these games because their style is tough to deal with. They are physical, they beat you up, and they're huge, and they get in the paint, and Cade is super skilled, and it's not great for Detroit when they don't have the shooters and when Cade's jumper isn't going. But if you make a couple shots and Cade's doing one of those things where he's getting in the paint and putting in 40 because he's hitting like fadeaways and elbow pull-ups and things like that, they're going to win the game. So if they can do that enough times, they will win enough games. And the way the bracket shakes out, who would their second round opponent be? It would either be Cleveland or it's not Atlanta. It's that other team, Toronto. Cleveland or Toronto, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's Cleveland or Toronto. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Cleveland or Toronto.
Yeah, I think I would favor them against both of those teams. So that would put Detroit in the Eastern Finals with home court advantage in a series against a team like Boston or New York. I just think that's a very competitive series. I don't think that's a trivial series to win. I do think the Pistons have weaknesses, but this next big question for me is just in general of like, are we underrating the effectiveness of this style in today's game, with my third big question of how will they officiate the game in the playoffs, right? How physical is the game? Because we've talked about it all year. That physicality conveys advantages to certain players and makes other players less effective when you're allowed to just bully ball, be super physical on offense and defense and the rebounding glass as well.
To your point about how much baked in efficacy that they have, both with their physicality, grabbing rebounds, getting more possessions and stuff. I'm not going to read all these numbers, but if you just look at every combination of Cade, Asar, and Duren together on the court, like if 2 of them are on, 1 is off, 1 is on, 2 are off, etc., basically every combination where at least one of them, and definitely when 2 of them are on, is good. Like I'm talking like +6, +7 net rating. Like Cade can be off and it's Asar and Duren. It could be Asar's on, the other 2 are off, Duren's on with Cade. It doesn't matter. They're all really good. And some of these lineups, right, when all 3 of them are on, they're approaching +12, right? They're about +11.4 net rating with a solid offensive rating, like in the low 120s, which is pretty solid for a really strong defensive team, right? And so you see a bunch of these and you're like, man, maybe the depth of what they bring, like you said, they bring in their 6th, 7th, 8th guy. Maybe there's not going to be somebody that's going to light up the game with their 3-point shooting. It's not going to be somebody that comes in and scores 40 points. But is it going to be somebody like Ron Holland, who's just going to play harder than anyone that's on the court? Yeah, he could do that. Dennis Jenkins. Like, let me tell you, in this time that Cade's been out and Jenkins has been running point, honestly, this has skyrocketed, in my opinion, of the Pistons. If this run didn't happen with Cade being injured, I probably would have come in a little bit lower with them. But now that they showed some success, and I know we can look at the schedule and they didn't play a bunch of like high-level teams the whole time, but they were also winning. They can only play the teams in front of them. They played some good teams, and they looked really, really good. So Jenkins, how successful is he going to be in the playoffs? Because he looks like he's ready for it. Jalen Duren is just a bear to handle. Like, you know, you and I have both talked about some criticisms of his game throughout the season, but at the end of the day, he's massive, right? And even if you're somebody like the Celtics who has Kata, of course, who's going to go out there and be big and fight for rebounds and stuff, Duren's a really talented guy for his size, right? So, I don't know. The Pistons, to me, really have a pretty strong chance. And if it was Celtics-Pistons, like, yeah, I know we have Celtics in the inner circle. But that's not like a for sure I'm going to bet all of my money on the Celtics in that series.
Yeah, it's a competitive series. I think the Pistons could win that series, especially with the home court advantage. Let me ask you a question, and then I want to say something about Jalen Duren as well, because he's fascinating to me. Where do you think the Pistons' half-court offense ranks in efficiency?
Half-court offense, Pistons.
Yes, the Detroit Pistons half-court offense. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to guess. I'm going to say like 16th.
16th.
Okay. Can I stop for a second?
Yes.
Is this first chance half-court offense?
Overall. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to say 16.
Okay. Yeah. They are 10th. They are 10th in half-court offense. They have about a 116 offensive rating. The Thunder are slightly ahead of them at 8th. The Cavs are 6th at 117. The Spurs over 117 are 5th. The Knicks are 4th at 118. Our Charlotte Hornets are 3rd at 119. The Boston Celtics are 2nd at 119.2, and Denver is at 120. That is how half-court offense shakes out. Now, I think it's a trap to think you're going to go into the postseason and not have any transition basketball. We saw this with the Indiana Pacers last year. It's just like, we can slow them down. It's like, no, you didn't slow them down, and you got cooked in transition. And so if I could take a slight detour on our East Coast road trip to the New York Knicks, my biggest thing with the Knicks are spunky as hell. Jalen Brunson, I mean, it's like, if you're like in a game where you need someone to do something crazy to save the earth, you can put Jalen Brunson in the game. He might do it. Jalen Brunson is just ice in his veins. But the defense in transition for the Knicks, we talk about pick and roll a lot and the inconsistency with pick and roll, and sometimes it feels good, and OG Anunoby's flying around and Mikal Bridges flying around. But they are a team where when you start slowing down the film and you look at their transition problems defensively, it all comes back to Cat, and then maybe Cat or Jalen Brunson trying to avoid mismatches. And so as you're running back, you got to be smart and faster and communicate better. And it's just a strain on the entire system. So transition matters is my point. All right. But when you're playing certain teams, if your style is to be able to contain the ball, protect the ball, and not turn it over, and you slow the game down and you learn everyone's tendencies, and you're like, hey, and this is where the possession game thing comes in. Do you sacrifice crashing the glass to get back in transition so it's more of a half-court game in the playoffs than it is in the regular season? Do you need the depth to do that? Can you play these players 40 minutes a game? Can Victor Wembanyama, someone asked in the comments, play 36 or 37 minutes a game? I mean, he did against the top teams, but I think this applies across the board. How much can you stress these players? Or is it a question where these teams crashing the glass, like Phoenix and Boston and Charlotte and all these teams, they're actually setting their transition defense right there, which is the idea behind it. So when Derek White and Baylor Shireman come crashing in from the wings, it's not that Boston is giving up transition. It's that they're stopping you from getting out in transition in the first place. And how tiring is that style? These are all the big stylistic questions I have about some of these matchups. And I don't know if you have anything to say on that, but I want to tie it back in a second to a thought about Jalen Duren.
Yeah. So are you saying that of some of these teams that we've talked about, you're more concerned about how New York would handle that sort of game in the playoffs? Like, is that?
No, that's just a full-on problem for New York. Full stop. Yeah. I think that's a big concern.
Which part of it is the
transition defense is a problem.
The transition defense.
Yeah.
And I think that bears out in some of the numbers, because what really makes me nervous about the Knicks is that when Brunson and Cat are on together, they're not even a +5 net rating, right? Those two on together is like a +4.8. Maybe it changed the last couple of days. I checked these maybe when there's a game or two, but it hovers around +5, right? But what is interesting is you have Towns out without Brunson, they're like a +10. You have Brunson without Towns, they're like a +8 or +9 or something like that. But the key here that I always find is when you add OG Anunoby into the equation and you take one of them out, then they look a lot better. So the point is with them is it's like when you have these two weaknesses defensively that are on there, I think there's a lot more scheming issues that kind of pop up, right? But OG Anunoby, with just one person that might have some scheme issues defensively, he can cover up so much of it. And of course, Mikal Bridges isn't a slouch defensively. Josh Hart flies around all over the place. Like Mitchell Robinson's a great rim protector, right? But I think OG Anunoby, this is going to be a huge playoffs for him because we've talked about his growth offensively. We've talked about just how he covers so many holes on defense. And I think if somebody's going to be the most buttoned up for this team and kind of captain the defense, it's going to be him and what he's able to do for them. So I think that's going to be interesting for what you're talking about is how much is OG going to be able to impact defensively, and is it going to cover up some of these kind of systemic weaknesses that we're seeing from the Knicks?
Stats department has it right here. The Knicks transition defense was 25th in the league this year with a 136 defensive rating in transition. The Thunder are the best defensive team by possession, by efficiency in transition. They have a 118 defensive rating. The Spurs right behind them at 122. So because when you're in transition, Cody, you give up a lot of points. I don't know if you know that.
Did you say 118?
That's the best.
Teams scored 118
in
points
transition.
per 100 possession in transition against the Thunder.
Yeah,
that is an insane number, Ben.
Really low.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. Because if you think you were talking about the half court numbers, the Denver Nuggets half court offense
exactly.
is better than how teams score against the Thunder in transition.
Yes.
I don't even know what to do with those two facts. That's fascinating.
The point I wanted to tie back to Jalen Duren, because I like the Pistons getting back in transition. I like all these other little king special team components of the game that I think might be more important now than at any time in NBA history, or maybe since like the 1970s. If you go back to that Derek White member video we did, I put up on screen the major components of offense that drive value, the major components of defense that drive value, and then the quote unquote little things or the special teams, everything in between. And I think as a basketball community, what we do, the most superficial fans just go points per game and rings, right? But as a basketball community, we try to be more honest. We say all right, we know offensively it's maybe your scoring and your playmaking and your shooting, and defensively that matters too. And we gotta think about playmaking and passing and defense. Okay. I mean, I spent years talking about playmaking and passing and defense. I once joked with you that I should call Greatest Peaks who's good at playmaking and defense that you don't notice. That's pretty much the rub. But right now we're playing a style of game that, to me, all of your awareness, your ability to identify things on the fly, your ability to process multiple coverages, your peripheral vision, your communication, your motor, your endurance, right? All of these things maybe are more valuable than ever. How you rebound on the glass, attention to detail in sets, the timing of your out of bounds plays. Nothing frustrates me more. I can't imagine being a coach and calling it out of bounds play, drawing it up in the huddle, and then you get out there and one of your players forgets the play, or they're just like, wait, am I supposed to be on this side or that side? It messes up the entire play. And these are the championship level plays that I think we're going to see in time. And I think Detroit does a lot of that stuff well. I think a lot of their players do that pretty well. But then, Asar Thompson has spacey moments where the game taxes him, and then he just makes up for it with his athleticism, because it's just like, Asar fell asleep and still blocked the shot. It doesn't make any sense. Jalen Duren is the one to me that is the big playoff question mark, not necessarily his offense, his defense, and I would say specifically his pick and roll defense. The Pistons do some very interesting things with him at the pick and roll because of his deficiencies. But when you put him under a microscope, the hips are very stiff. The footwork can be clunky. And they do stuff like, if you go back to the Boston game, I was reviewing one of the Boston games before recording today, and Boston's running their Spain pick and roll that they love to run. And the Pistons have Duren out at half court, basically trapping the ball handler. I'm like, what kind of coverage is this against pick and roll? It's going to be a huge 4-on-3 behind the play. So you get in a playoff series. He's so athletic and they're so good everywhere that it feels like you can kind of cover it up. But this was the dynamic with the Knicks last year. The Knicks kept going after him in these pick and roll situations. They're perfectly built to do it. And I think Detroit's got to kind of feel fortunate that they don't have to see the Knicks in the second round based on how the bracket shakes out, because that is a very close matchup, I think, precisely because of this pick and roll dynamic. So that's a huge one to watch for me with the Pistons, as well as the shooting. And, you talked about Dennis Jenkins getting minutes and all this stuff. Like, who else is going to be able to step up and make shots and make plays around Cade? Because I'm not worried about Cade. Cade's coming and Cade's going to bring it. And the dude has that Jason Kidd thing where, he can shoot 38% in a game and completely dominate the entire playoff game.
It's not just pick and roll defense with Duren too. I would just say it's defending in space in general. I thought I flagged a few times, a lot of them against Wemby, trying to defend, like, what am I going to do with a guy that has the three-point shot, but also wants to put the rock in the deck and drive to the basket. And like you said, it is lucky that they're not on the same side as the Knicks there, because I think there would be some difficulties in how is he going to defend Towns, but they'd probably put one of their smalls on Towns because that seems to be what they end up doing. But even in the pick and roll, there's multiple times throughout the season where I feel like they adjust it, where they're like, all right, Asar, you just need to take the big man because we need you to be in the pick and roll defending this. Or Asar, you need to just kind of hang out here because when this pick and roll action has happened that Duran's in, you need to help over and kind of cover it. And we know that you can fly back and cover your guy. So they have these guys. We talked about Javonte Green, too, being one of these guys that's just a dynamic defensive player. So, yeah, you're absolutely right in calling that part of it out. But I think it's a pretty sizable crack in their defensive scheme, but it is within a team context of a bunch of guys that kind of like the Celtics just play really hard and then just extremely high level defensive players. So maybe that can cover like some of those cracks. But at the end of the day, just still a bruising defensive team that's going to be a nightmare for any team that's going to face them.
I kind of want to ask you at this point in the show, if you feel like there's sort of a sleeper team or one of these teams that's not in the four that we talked about at the top, that, you know, could Toronto or Cleveland or someone in the West, could somebody, Minnesota, you know, I kind of want to ask you that and take the show in that direction. But if you have other thoughts or other things to get to first, we can do that, because while I let you think about that for a second, we just have been talking about the Knicks and the Pistons. I mean, I think the Pistons can make the finals. The Knicks, it gets really interesting to me because, like, this whole idea of having these weak points and having these breakdowns and having these things to pay, needing Josh Hart to shoot threes and have these great moments, getting good minutes from your bench players, whoever. I mean, I don't know who that's going to be for New York. Is it going to be Deuce McBride? Does Jordan Clarkson show up? Does he get resurrected? You know what you're going to get from Mitchell Robinson. So I think there's this interesting thing where, like, the Knicks ceiling is still pretty good, but each time you have to go through an opponent and a gauntlet to do that, it gets less and less likely. So, like, could the Knicks beat the Celtics? I guess, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. But then could the Knicks beat the Celtics and the Pistons? Well, the thing is, I don't know if the Knicks are going to be beating the Celtics because of some playoff gear that they hit versus just the Knicksy things that they do to find a way to win a series. And then they have to try to do that again. Then they have to try to do that again. Right?
We're not handing out awards, but I'm going to make up an award right now, and I'm going to give it to the Knicks, because if they win, they have the highest Rudy Tomjanovich Never Underestimate the Heart of a Champion award based on what Jalen Brunson's heroics are about to be done for. So they're the Never Underestimate the Heart of the Championship team of these playoffs, because if that's what happens, that's at the end of the day what's going to happen. Brunson's just going to go out there and do his magical stuff. I think the other thing that's unspoken is Mikal Bridges almost played 2,700 minutes and he played 82 games. By the way, people are talking about awards. He should just be MVP. Just give it to him now.
81 games and 23 seconds in the final game to just keep that AC Green streak going.
Is that what happened? He played 23 seconds. Oh, that's gross.
Yeah. So from an awards perspective, he did not play 82 games. He only played 81 games or whatever.
Interesting. So in Basketball Reference, it's flagged as 82 games, but in terms of awards, there's actually a different category where it's 81 games.
Yeah, we've seen that, right? Devin Booker, he played under 15 minutes in some games, so he wasn't even close to qualifying. I think he only had like 62 qualifying games. Why are we back on the
Did you see that awards voting is delayed because the Luka Doncic situation is like under arbitration?
I did, and I take full credit for that. I'm very happy that's going in that direction. You've stalled long enough, Cody. Do you have any other? Would you like to make the case right now for the Cavaliers or the Minnesota Timberwolves, or is there a first round matchup that you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna go a crazy direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Knicks are gonna win, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Hawks won that series.
You wouldn't be shocked if the Hawks won that series.
Yeah. I think
is it a matchup thing? What is it?
Yes, it's definitely a matchup thing, because the thing about the Hawks and the way that they play, and it all comes down to, I was trying to, it's really funny. I was scouting as much Hawks Cavs as I could. So I'm like, this is going to be a really fascinating series. And then lo and behold, no Cavs Hawks, but it is what it is. But it's the same sort of thing where the Hawks have this offense where they have Okongwu, who's a really solid stretch five. he was able to punish Donovan Mitchell and whomever else in the paint a few of those switches. It's like, oh, I'm still going to be able to hit a little hook over you. Dyson Daniels is such a weird player where he's setting screens. You can throw him a little pocket pass, and he's going to create from that position. They're just a dynamic, free-flowing offense that doesn't have like the singular Cade Cunningham focal point that's easier to load up on. And I think what we're talking about with the Knicks, I think it's going to stress test some of these, like, hey, how well is this defense going to be able to hang together across an entire series? Like, how can you scheme for some of the randomness and just like weirdness they bring? And so I don't really believe in like the super high end level of the Hawks offense, but I believe in the fact that it's relentless and weird enough that I could see the Knicks kind of crumbling underneath it in the series.
I guess it would not be shocking in terms of the objective quality of those teams throughout the regular season, but I would be close to. I guess I feel like I would be close to shocked because of what we talked about with the Knicks. They're just the Brunson thing and OG and Josh Hart in the Garden. It just feels like it's going to be tough for Atlanta to get to 4 before the Knicks get to 4. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if I have to pick an upset, that's going to be it. And oh man. I'm trying to look at these other ones. Let me ask you one.
You don't want to go with Minnesota over Denver?
Listen. And I know some commenter out there is already getting angry. Compare me to some other hosts out in the world.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm doing this to you.
All right. So, for the record, somebody unfavorably compared me to somebody in the world, by the way, talking about Anthony Edwards. So now I'm very self-conscious about talking about the Wolves.
This is why you should never read comments about you.
So, okay, since February, the Wolves have been really not good. Mm-hmm. Like when Edwards is on the court since February, they're like a +2, right?
Yeah. When he's off the court, they're even better.
No, they're actually not. They're like a neutral. They're like right around neutral. So he has like a +2 on off in this time. They've had.
Doesn't he have a negative on off for the year though? Was I making that up?
I think that's switched. Right. Okay. I think it switched at some point. I could be wrong, but I think near the end here. But the thing about the Wolves is McDaniels is out, and then it was impossible to scout them because Gobert was out for a couple games, then Randall was out and Edwards is out. So like they haven't been collectively together, and I get that. So maybe it's all going to happen, but it's just kind of been gross watching them. And I don't think this is your father's Timberwolves, which actually maybe it is because your father's Timberwolves
your older
are
brothers
really bad.
You mean your older brother's Timberwolves?
No, it's more like yourself 2 years ago Timberwolves. So I don't see them.
That's your older brother, right?
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it's not your older brother's Timberwolves. Yeah.
Most people have older siblings that are about 2 years older than them.
I guess that's true. My siblings are.
That's
quite
how reproduction works.
Yeah. Is that where we're going now?
No, I'm just saying.
So yeah, that's my long-winded reason for why the Timberwolves will not be upsetting the Nuggets.
Older siblings not 20 years older than them. You're like your older brother's Kevin Garnett Timberwolves back when Sam Cassell was riding the bicycle.
Okay. First of all, please tell me that the Kevin Garnett Timberwolves was like 10 years ago, right? I need to hear that. I can't hear it was 20 years ago. So stop.
The 2004 Timberwolves that I just referenced were 22 years ago.
All right, so we got that out of the way. Let me ask you. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Hornets, because they have a chance for what the play. I still can't figure out the play.
They have a chance to make the 8 seed and play the Pistons.
Do you think that they have a chance to beat the Pistons in a first round matchup?
I mean, yes, they have a chance. It's weird because first of all, I don't even know if they're going to make it. They just might lose and be done. They play this game as of record. They're about to start this game as we're recording. This game is about to happen. The thing is, that team reminds me a little of, say, the early 2000s Sacramento Kings. And the early 2000s Sacramento Kings, the Kings were a poverty franchise. It's going to shock you to hear that, I know. If you're a young listener listening at home, the Kings were a poverty franchise in the 1990s, and they had Mitch Richmond for many years, and he was an all-star player, and they wouldn't even sniff the playoffs. Who are we kidding? And then all of a sudden, they trade for Chris Webber, and they get Vlade Divac, and they start reconfiguring things, and they have this young, spunky team with Jason Williams, White Chocolate, and they make the playoffs. They're very, very exciting. They're a great league pass team, and they play the Lakers. And you may have heard of the 2000 Los Angeles Lakers. They had Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant and Glenn Rice. Cody, you forgot that one. You're like, Glenn Rice, the all-star Glenn Rice from the Miami Heat and Charlotte Hornets. Yes, he was traded for Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones, of course, one of the great players in NBA history. So they play this first-round matchup, and it goes 5. And it's a great competitive there were only 5-game playoff series back then in the first round. There's so many details that I have to add to make this make sense. Basically, they pushed the Lakers to the brink and to the limit. But yes, you're wagging your finger. Yes.
That comes down to like a weird goaltend call or non-goaltend call, if I remember correctly, right? Is there something at the end where Divac got a block and maybe it wasn't a block? Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I thought that might be the series that I'm thinking of. Anyway, I'm derailing you. You should continue.
No. I thought my whole point was that they were blown out in game 5.
Oh,
that was my whole point. Yes. So game 1 and 2 in LA, the Lakers hold serve. And then the Kings kind of surprise them, continue to play them very difficultly, take them out in game 3 and 4 pretty easily. And the decisive game 5 back in LA, is a blowout. And in a sense, that's kind of my feeling. If Charlotte could make it into this series, they could do some nasty things. They're really good. But to get all the way over the hump, this is where, Cody, I'm just indexing back on like little things: rebounding, defensive intensity, endurance, depth in the lineup, quality coaching, all that stuff. And Charles Lee's done a great job, but Bickerstaff does have a experience edge if that were to be the matchup. So I think implicit in so many of the things we talked about today, just like the video we released this week on the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel, is the coaching is a big deal in these series matchups. David Adelman and what he's going to in the West, Mitch Johnson, who's done some interesting things. I love what they're doing with Wemby, keeping him close to the basket. Shout out Sean Sweeney. We talked about that before, but like, that's another unknown. How are we going to see the matchup of not just adjustments, in-game adjustments, series adjustments, all these things, coaching-wise? What are you going to do with your rotation? Are you going to shorten it? Do you have 8 or 9 guys you can trust? So these are all big question marks for me, and that's most of the things I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if you have any other questions or topics or philosophical areas to take us before we get out of here, but I am psyched for this.
I am psyched too. This should be a great playoffs. Like, genuinely, it's setting up for a really exciting couple of months. Can we talk about the Cavaliers for a second? Because they've been loudly absent from our analysis today.
The Cleveland Cavaliers, this is Donovan Mitchell and James Harden and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Max Strus. Yes.
Are you going to do that for the entire roster?
Sam Merrill, Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder. Anyone left in that? Oh, Dean Wade. I think that's your playoff rotation.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Where are you?
Someone is so mad right now. Someone is on the keyboard right now that I forgot Jalen Tyson. They're like, how dare you? Jalen Tyson will be in the playoff rotation. Maybe he will. Where am I on them? Let's see. They have a matchup with Toronto. I think they're the favorite in that series.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. They should probably beat Toronto. And then I think they could make things very interesting with like a 2-1. I wouldn't be shocked if it was 2-1 against Detroit and the Pistons had to figure some stuff out. James Harden had a huge game 3 or something like that. I just don't know if they have the offensive horses, the defensive horses, the whole system to make it through the gauntlet. I don't. Here's the problem. It gets back to what I said about the Knicks. I mathematically don't love their matchup with Detroit, and I don't love their matchup with probably either team on the other side of the Eastern bracket. The Celtics, if they came out, or even the Knicks. Like, that would be the pathway for the Knicks. The Knicks upset the Celtics again, and then instead of having to play the Pistons, they have home court against a team they might be better than in Cleveland. I'm assuming health. We know somebody's going to roll an ankle, and health is going to mess up some of these series and the probabilities and things like that. But that's kind of how I'm thinking about them. Are you in the same place, or are you ready to come out and say Donovan Mitchell is going to be a finals MVP candidate like Derek White?
Well, rolling an ankle, I think the question is actually how many times will Jalen Brunson roll his ankle during these playoffs? So it's going to happen at least 2 or 3 times, and that might just be game 1. So the thing about the Cavs, and again, this is watching especially those Hawks games really intensely. It felt like possession to possession. I was like, man, the Hawks can really hang with the Cavs. This is going to be really tough. But then there were stretches, and I still remember the stretches like that. There's a particular stretch, I think, in the third quarter against one of those Pacers games in the last year's playoffs, where Donovan Mitchell just goes Super Saiyan, right? Like if you were to rank like Super Saiyan players in the NBA, Donovan Mitchell is maybe the most underrated. Like,
can we explain this for the non-anime fans? The Saiyan race. Can you give a quick background on that?
Listen. I'm not even an anime fan. I just know Super Saiyan is
Cody
when
doesn't
you go,
even know what a Super
and you're like
Saiyan is
hair
from.
goes like it's Dragon Ball Z, right?
Okay,
but there's like the Steph Curry meme, LeBron James, like peak Twitter years of like 2016, 2017, things like that. But my understanding, and I'm sure someone's gonna yell at me here, is you just flex really hard and then you somehow channel your powers until you turn into like the unstoppable version of yourself.
Yes.
Is that the gist of it?
I think it's like when the Hulk goes Hulk. That's the you know, Bruce Banner going to the Hulk. That's the idea.
That's more like my understanding of things. It's like big green guy, strong and unstoppable. But that's kind of what happens with Donovan Mitchell. Like he just doesn't miss threes, and he's just like, I'm getting to the basket every possession, and you can't stop me. And I guess like James Harden's the second side guy right now, and they're like, I guess Evan Mobley feels a little bit more confident this time around. So I don't know. They have like this spurt ability where they could literally beat any team like twice in the playoffs. Like they could go up 2-0 on any team in these playoffs just based on like that sort of thing. But on a possession basis, like they just don't have the juice. Like I think we talked about the MFer energy. Like you talk about you're ranking all these teams in MFer energy. Like the Pistons just lapped them like 3 times over. They just don't have like a ton of that. So I don't know. They're good, but if I'm going to rank the top 4 East teams, let's just do it right now. I have Celtics 1, Pistons 2, Knicks 3, Cavaliers 4. And I think those 1 and 2, and then there's going to be a separation between before 3. And then I still think I probably have the Knicks a section higher than the Cavaliers.
Let's think outside the box, Cody. Let's think outside the box. We know that the playoffs are going to start. Remember in 2023, the playoffs started, and I texted everyone associated with thinking basketball after the first quarter of the Los Angeles Lakers Memphis Grizzlies series. I was like, I like the Grizzlies in this series. They got athleticism and they matched up well in the regular season, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is like defensive player of the year, something like that. That rings a bell. I don't know. I can't remember that far back. But what I remember is after that first quarter, I texted everyone. I was like, oopsie, Anthony Davis is just, no, they're not winning this series. This series is over. So my big question, like thinking outside the box, is what player or team or style is either going to look like that over the opening weekend when we watch this and go, this looks different, or same question, but from a different side of the coin. What officiating change, because we know the refs are going to be calling some different stuff in the playoffs. What officiating change in the postseason is going to have us bug-eyed after that opening weekend and go, I didn't think about how good this team could be if they're going to call it this way. That's what I'm trying to think in this outside the box segment here at the end. Is it the Houston Rockets are allowed to foul 87 times a game? Like what is going to happen that's going to make us go, the playoffs are very different for this team or this player?
It's a really good question, because last year we get like some of those football series. Like I think we started with the Rockets Warriors in round 1 last year. And at times it didn't even look like a basketball game. Like it was outright dangerous for periods of time. And
they tried to hurt Steph Curry.
Yeah. And then he just hurt them with his shooting ability. Like it was unbelievable.
And then he injured his hamstring, and that was the most unceremonious. And Steph Curry hasn't lost a playoff series in years. Yeah. Because he didn't participate in the second round. Don't forget though, Minnesota, they always dominate in the postseason by making it to the conference finals against milquetoast.
I'm abstaining from commenting.
Sorry.
On that last comment. I have to ask you though, because I feel like I have a pretty good handle on every series. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to go to the bank on all of them. What's going to happen between the Lakers and Rockets? Is someone going to win that series?
You haven't seen Helio LeBron lately?
I actually haven't checked in on the Lakers.
Are you serious? You have not? No. They haven't lost since all the Helio LeBron has taken over recently.
I've been seeing that Bronny has been doing stuff. So
I think that's when you're 41, that's an extension of Helio LeBron. You need like your actual genetic offspring on the court helping you. That's part of the
Odin with his Ravens.
That's part of the Super Saiyan thing. That's what you do. You do a fusion dance. I wish everyone could get.
Do you think there's any chance that this Lakers team beats the Rockets team?
I do.
You do.
Yeah.
Even though the Rockets have like a top 8 offense.
Well, you didn't ask me what the chance was
in the last month.
Are you saying there's like a decent chance or like a 30 or 40% chance? I don't think so.
Okay, so if we were to do our like, you got to put like a percentage that you feel confident.
For the Lakers.
What are you going to pick for that series?
All right. I think the odds that the Lakers could be up 2-1 are probably higher than they win the whole series because that's just best of 3 versus best of 7. I could see them being up 2-1. And then could they make it all the way home? What would it take? It would take some, LeBron. Do you have a sense? Do you have a number in your head? I'm trying to think this out. The calculator is computing as we talk right now. I'm trying to think what would have to happen. Luke Kennard was going to have a big series. Jake LaRavia is going to have a big series. DeAndre Ayton probably would have to do things. And this is the team that figured out if you just double Kevin Durant, the entire Rockets offense discombobulates. Kevin Durant had like 6 turnovers in the half the last time they played the Lakers and their trapping defense. Of course, I'm contractually obligated to point out that game came down to the wire and they had Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves on the roster. So yeah, it does not look good. I will say 12%. What will you say?
Wait, 12% chance the Lakers win?
I think it could be 12%. What do you think? Oh, too high?
So you think there's a much better chance the Rockets are going to win this series?
Are you you're giving the Rockets only like what, 60% chance to win this series?
I just don't know if either team's going to win this one.
You don't think either team? Someone has to explain how this works to Cody. This is what happens when we record extra long shows and we get into the second hour. He thinks neither team is going to win the series. He's like, that's amazing. You gave either team more than 10% odds to win the series.
If I'm the Lakers, if I'm JJ Redick, here's the defensive scheme right here. Marcus Smart is on Kevin Durant. You never leave him. You never leave his side, right? Şengün and Amen Thompson. If they're with outside 15 feet, you're zoning up. You're just not even going near them. They can take as many jump shots as you want. I don't know what you do with the rest of it. I'm not that coachable, but those are like my two Rockets rules that I'm instilling. But at the end of the day, I think the Rockets are gonna handle the Lakers team. They just don't have the horses.
Yeah.
I mean, no one has horses because it's a basketball game, but
yeah, it's tough. 12% may be high. 12%, maybe 8%. I'll say 8%. 8%. I'm excited to see what happens just with the Helio LeBron-ness of it all. I can't believe you're not. I expected you to just be locked in on this. The guy's got like 30, 15, and 5 every game now. They just run everything through him, and he's just like the 2015 finals, except in slower motion with less jumping, right?
If that happens and they beat the Rockets, you better be ready for me. You better be ready on this podcast. Because
didn't someone say if that happens, he's the GOAT? Someone said that this week.
LeBron is the leader in NBA history of if he does this thing, he's the GOAT, of people just saying those kinds of things. And as he's gotten older, it's been progressively crazier, right? It's like, oh, if he scores 10 more points, 100 straight more games, he's the GOAT, right? If he wins the round 1, he's the GOAT. I think one of the saddest parts about the playoffs is I legitimately think Clippers-Warriors is going to be a really fun game. And I think they could do some damage in the playoffs. But the issue is one of those teams might have to play the Thunder if they make it all the way through.
No, not might. Not might.
Not might?
They have to. Yeah. If one of those teams make it, they have to play the Thunder.
Oh, I meant because if they win, I don't want to count out either the Suns or the Blazers. Right?
Yes, but I'm saying they're the only team that they can play in a full series is the Thunder.
Yeah, that's correct. So if they win and then they beat one of either the Suns or the Blazers, then they would face the Thunder. And then it's just kind of good night Gracie for that squad.
This is one of the reasons I love the play-in tournament. I love that it gives us this little single elimination March Madness. Like, can Steph Curry? It's like the Olympics. Can he just have a Steph Curry moment against the Clippers and then a Steph Curry moment against the Suns or Blazers, and make it into the full series? Like, that's an indelible moment potentially. That's a really cool thing for these players later in their career. Or conversely, if you're really, really young and it's your first opportunity to do something, can the Blazers and Denny Avdia do something like that? Where I guess for them it's only one game, but the Clippers are interesting. You know, if Kawhi could do that for 2 games, and Kawhi and Darius Garland, but both those teams have a hard stop in the first round against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That is like a 99%er for the Thunder.
All right, let's end with the big one.
Yes.
Who's winning the championship, Ben?
As I've explained in great detail,
No,
yes, I have. I explained this. I told you it's a round robin, and the clear winner of the championship is going to be the Boston Spurs Denver Thunder. That's who's going to win the championship. Who do you think is going to win the championship? You're going to say the Thunder. I can see it in your face.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think the Thunder are repeating this year. I shouldn't be. Okay, here's the sadness. I don't want OKC people to be offended. Cards on the table. I think it would be really cool if the Spurs won it all.
OKC people be offended? We're the only podcast in the last 2 years that has positively spoken about the Oklahoma City Thunder. We can say anything we want about them at this point.
They're going to win the championship. There's my statement.
It's funny you say this. I think last year they were my favorite. Mm-hmm. We talked about them versus Boston in the preview, I believe. They were the team I leaned toward all year. This year, I have less confidence in them than I did last year. Yeah.
I think last year, a big part is I thought, and I know the Celtics were eliminated in the second round, but I thought their only competition was going to be the Celtics. Like, I was like, if it's not Thunder Celtics in the finals, the Thunder are just going to blaze their way. And I did not see the Indiana Pacers train coming. Whereas this year, I think there's more top-end teams that could really challenge them in the playoffs. And I know they were pushed by the Nuggets and stuff, but I didn't exactly see that coming before the playoffs. So I think by virtue of that, I liked their chances last year better, but they're still my majority favorite here. Plurality, I should say, favorite.
Okay, so not over 50%.
I don't think so. No.
Field over 50%, Thunder under 50%.
Yes, I'll take that.
Yeah, definitely for me, that is the case. Anything else you want to mention? We just now have to go do the playoffs. We have to do the playoffs. This is ridiculous.
Let's get it going.
We have to sit around and wait. To support us, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That is always the best way to do it. It's where we have extra video content. That's where we have a lot of these stats that we use to prepare for the show and for the videos. And today, we covered everything. So I think, today is going to be one of those days where we have to have a very brief, we can't do a real post show. It hurts me. But I have to go watch basketball.
I miss them. We need to bring them back, but playoffs and thinkies, they take precedent.
Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here. Thanks for listening all the way through with us. And next time we see you in a week from now, all of this will just be meaningless. It will we'll just look like fools. I can't wait. That's it for this one. As always, we hope you are having a great day.